Welcome to the Monday, November 3rd edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Joe Bartel. You can find me at Twitter, JB Fantasy Sports. Alongside me every Monday, Jake Letarski. You can find me at RotoJake. Today, we're going over the Week 10 Waiver Wire pickups. It's crazy that we're now into November. Of course, this is about 24 hours, maybe 28 hours or so until the official NFL trade deadline. We had a Jair Alexander trade from the Ravens to the Eagles on Saturday. We had the Eagles acquiring pass rusher Jalen Phillips as well too with the Dolphins earlier today. I don't anticipate, at least during the recording of the show, that there's going to be a lot of action, but we do have waiver wire targets also keeping that in mind with the trade deadline again tomorrow as well. So, Jake, let's dive right into it right away. Our top 5 waiver wire pickups this week. We normally try to give a collective group of 5 for both of us. I would say this is a bit mundane, even relative to last week, and a lot of repeats as well from weeks prior for the waiver wire.
Oh, yeah. 3 of my top 5s are guys that we warned you about last week. A couple of those players are on buys. We're on buys last week, and we recommended as a stash. But I don't know about you guys. I had a lot of roster crunch this week and unfortunately couldn't stash most of these guys. Before we get to those, I threw Sam Darnold in there, number 1 pickup, 50% rostered on Yahoo. Obviously, he lit up the Commanders last night, basically, having to throw the ball only for 3/4 of that game. With the Jaden Daniels injury happening this week, and he'll probably be out for the season. And the streamers this week with some pretty tough matchups. A lot of people are going to have to replace a quarterback this week, and Sam Darnold is your first option. 50% roster. I know it's tough. He does have a pretty tough rest of season schedule too. There are only 2 bottom half defenses against opposing quarterbacks, but his buys behind him. He is consistently producing. He has one of the best receivers in the league in JSN, Jackson Smith-Njigba. I think he should be your first option if you're looking to replace quarterbacks this week. That's Sam Darnold.
Yeah, 4 teams on bye. Patrick Mahomes, Dak Prescott being 2 among them with the Chiefs and Cowboys, and probably Joe Flacco in a certain kind of league as well too, unavailable this week. So a streaming quarterback makes sense. You referenced it as well. Tough for the normal one. So I think I have Michael Penix on there. He has a bit of a difficult matchup, but normally talk about like Tua, for example. Well, the Dolphins have a tough spot as well. Trevor Lawrence is going to be in a difficult matchup as well. Really, Sam Darnold, if you are streaming quarterbacks in 1 quarterback leagues, you should argue, or is arguably probably in that mix, but otherwise I think it's going to be kind of bleak if you are in need of replacement when you haven't already prepared. Yep. So Sam Darnold and he did all that last night without Cooper Kupp and a few of the other receiver options. Like he had rookie Torrey Horton, who we'll talk about later in the show, having a great day. This is just Sam Darnold playing well, Jackson Smith-Njigba playing well, and the Seahawks. They did what they needed to do against a bad Commanders team, and of course one that lost Jaden Daniels late. But I was impressed with what I saw from Darnold last night. I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the same vein of quarterbacks, Joe Flacco moved up above our 51%, threshold this past week. But with the Bengals on bye, he's going to be a very viable starting quarterback after that bye week is over. Clearly, that defense has nothing going for it and isn't going to be getting any better anytime soon. Even a coaching shakeup's not going to fix it here at this point here. And you can see the visible frustration from the rest of the Bengals. Flacco had a career day. Now the Bears defense pretty banged up, not so hot either, but Flacco could fall below our threshold if people have to drop him during the Bengals bye. So he's another possible longer-term candidate here to go out and throw out there as far as quarterbacks go.
Let's go into Luke Musgrave. Of course, we are Packer fans here, so this has been an atrociously horrible weekend for me, at least. Halloween was fun on Friday, but watching the Packers have one of the worst upset losses in recent memory, and then losing the only bright spot on the offense for the rest of the season, Tucker Kraft, who confirmed to tear his ACL earlier today. It's been very frustrating. There will be a lot of sites that talk about Luke Musgrave as the top waiver wire pickup this week. I think in part because there's not a lot of options. Again, a lot of our names will be repeats. I want to really strongly push back on the notion that, and you're going to see this, Luke Musgrave was a second-round pick. Remember, they took Musgrave ahead of Tucker Kraft. The draft capital is there. Musgrave's a super great athlete. He runs a 4.55, and he's 6'6". If he is just not injured, he'll be okay. And look how the Packers use that offense, or use the tight end in the offense. Tucker Kraft is the exact antithesis of what Luke Musgrave is after the catch. Just to say, Musgrave can't even stand his feet when he's wide open within 15 yards. There is zero way in my mind Musgrave does anything close to what Tucker Kraft did this year. Again, horrible for us as Packer fans, but I think a lot of people talk about Luke Musgrave, top waiver wire pickup, and to me, he's much more in the range of Juwan Johnson, here's 3 catches for 60 yards type of deal. Like I have zero confidence Musgrave is a major asset in fantasy moving forward.
Yes, we want to allot some time to talk about Luke Musgrave because of the general landscape of tight ends and the fact he's our cover boy as a new name here. But I don't think Musgrave makes either of our top 5 and probably not collectively the top 10. I mean, there's no doubt there will be more targets possibly heading his way here. But to think he'd be a 1-for-1 replacement for Tucker Kraft, who it was confirmed has an ACL injury out for the season here. Musgrave, yeah, sure, there might be some targets to go around. Musgrave is good at finding space in the zone, and Jordan Love has shown some development in fitting the ball into tight zone coverage when his receivers find that space, which Musgrave does well. But the biggest difference is Musgrave won't be getting the designed tight end screens that Kraft was getting that were working so well for the Packers offense. We saw it, in full swing last week against Pittsburgh, to some degree this week here against Carolina. But Luke Musgrave won't be on the field as much because he's not the blocker that Kraft was, and they're not going to design those screens in the same way. Will he have some 3 catches for 50-yard games? Absolutely. Is that viable in fantasy, useful in fantasy, especially in your fishbowl 2 tight end premium leagues? Absolutely. But Luke Musgrave isn't going to pick up and save your season and give you a starting surefire tight end the rest of the way, not in the way that Oronde Gadsden is going to be able to do, the way that he's been looking. So he's in there in the playable tight end stream if you find yourself in a tough spot, deep league, tight end premium league. And there will be more targets to go his way. We talked about Kraft, but Matthew Golden also left with an injury.
Oh, yeah.
I don't believe he came back. Dontavian Wicks has been banged up. There will be targets to go around, and he'll be someone that isn't the defense's primary option, and Love will be able to find him in his zone, but not nearly as physical as Kraft, and as a result won't be anywhere as good in terms of yards after the catch, which is what made Kraft so good. Every time Kraft got the ball on one of those screens, you had confidence that he was going to body over a couple of people and possibly score. It's not the same with Musgrave. The 3 catches, 50 yards, there'll be a lot of those types of lines the rest of the season because the Packers do use the tight end in the offense, and there's utility there. But Musgrave isn't going to be any kind of game-changing pickup here, bye-week fill-in at best.
Oronde Gadsden you mentioned. I'd rather have Harold Fannin. I'd rather have Mason Taylor. I'd rather have Juwan Johnson. And these guys are all waiver wire tight ends throughout the week or throughout the season that we've mentioned before. And I would rather have over Luke Musgrave, even though we know Musgrave will probably be elevated to a more crucial role within the offense now with Tucker Kraft done for the rest of the season. So I put a keep him honest bid on the waiver wire article like at 6% because I do think there's certainly some utility by default. He's going to have to be more involved in the offense. You mentioned Matthew Golden being injured. Dontavian Wicks hasn't played the past 2 games. I think Christian Watson probably makes my top 10 waiver wire list for that same reason. And I would rather have Watson from a volume part of things rather than Luke Musgrave's kind of folding in all the injury news for the Packers, the biggest one being, of course, Tucker Kraft done for the rest of the year. Super, super unfortunate. Right up my alley in terms of Wisconsin sports. That felt exactly how my weekend has been now for a couple times. So just wanted to get to that because I imagine a lot of people are going to have incorrect analysis about, well, Tucker Kraft is out. Just go ahead and pick up the replacement because the Packers use tight ends. Does not work that way, and not for a guy that is not as skilled as Tucker Kraft in Luke Musgrave. Continuing on with our top 10 waiver wire list, and really more like top 5, top 7, we have a bunch of repeat running backs. And again, doing the show on Monday prior to the NFL trade deadline, there might be some information that I think adds value to a few of these players. We talked about Tajay Spears last week. We talked about Isaiah Davis last week. So just going over those names again.
Yeah, so basically I have 2A and 2B in my top 5 here, both running backs in kind of similar speculative type situations here. The first one I mentioned is Tajay Spears. However, he is 45% roster. People are catching on. There are a lot of Tony Pollard trade rumors out there here, and Tajay Spears would theoretically take over as the top back in that offense. Would he get a full workload? Probably not. They'd probably find another body there, but 75%. And, of course, the pass-catching running back. Now, a couple downside Spears. You've always said the biggest knock on him is that he probably can't take a full workload, and that's probably true. Titans had a rough day offensively, to say the least. Their touchdowns were only on the defense special team side. The offense was rough. Pollard had 26 snaps compared to 20 for Spears. Pollard ran the ball 10 times for 56 yards, caught 1 pass for 12 yards. Spears ran the ball 7 times for 26 yards, so less efficient, but he did catch all 3 of his targets for 36 yards. And that's, again, the value here in Tajay Spears. You know, assuming the Titans are going to be behind him, getting those check down and swing type routes, and giving you some utility in PPR formats. So Tajay Spears makes it with the possible his lead dog is out. But 2B is Isaiah Davis, is someone who has continued to come up on the waiver wire show all season long. You know, he's on a level playing field with me for Spears because, you know, we would need the Jets to trade Breece Hall for Isaiah Davis to actually become startable. Now, Hall and Davis both had their best games of the season in the week before this week. Of course, the Jets were on bye this week, but that was against the Bengals. And we'll talk about the Bengals defense. It's going to be constantly one to target for the entirety of the year here. And I'm sure the Jets would mix in a relative unknown and not just let Isaiah Davis take the entirety of the offensive reps there. But so that way he's similar to Tajay Spears, 2A and 2B. Isaiah Davis, I rostered through the bye. His roster ownership percentage has gotten down to about 13% in Yahoo leagues. I think he is obviously you're not putting your bids in for most leagues until tomorrow night. But if you have some dead weight, a guy on bye, or somebody that you're not starting in Monday Night Football tonight, maybe go ahead and make that move now, get ahead of it. That's a possibility in a lot of leagues. But yeah, and you won't be able to do that with Spears, of course, because he played this week. But Isaiah Davis could, that could be a little loophole because of the ownership being so low. So a couple of guys in bad offenses with high PPR ceilings. I mean, they're going to get targets in the passing game, but a couple of teams that could really make your team better down the stretch and give you startable, RB2 flex type of players when the matchups are right. Now, Spears and Davis, again, the rest of season schedule isn't, crazy attractive, but
they're so bad offensively. It's just hard.
Yeah.
They're so bad offensively that I don't think either team you want to really speculate on from the rest of season. Like the value of Tajay Spears in fantasy right now is as a pass catcher on a team that we project to be trailing often. And the value of Isaiah Davis is that I think of the two, maybe you could weigh in if you feel differently, Jake, but of Breece Hall and Tony Pollard, I think Breece Hall is more likely to be traded. And in that scenario, especially with Braylon Allen on injured reserve, Isaiah Davis walks into a spot volume-wise where even if it ends up being like 15 carries for 60 yards and gets a few catches, that floor is why, at least at 13% roster right now where Isaiah Davis is at on Monday, that's the reason to go ahead and say like that. That's why I want him over Tajay Spears.
Yeah, absolutely. So then with those guys out of the way, we kind of move to the next tier of running backs. The only one I actually ranked is Dylan Sampson. He's someone that we talked about last week because there's a Quinshon Judkins injury. He's got a shoulder injury. He's considered day-to-day. Dylan Sampson made my top 5, unlike the counterpart, Tank Bigsby, who, again, remember before the Eagles bye this week, Saquon Barkley went down with injury. The difference is Saquon believes he's going to be healthy. I think, there's something to that. The Saquon injury is not thought to be as serious. We'll kind of see his practice participation.
Bigsby, I'm going to pause you. I'll pause you because both Judkins and Saquon Barkley, really since their injuries happened last week, neither were deemed to be serious. We heard specifically from Barkley say he thinks he'll be ready for Monday, but Kevin Stefanski, head coach of the Browns, also said Quinshon Judkins is day-to-day with the shoulder injury from last week. So I don't think it's a fair characterization to say, well, Saquon Barkley Tank Bigsby doesn't make the list because Saquon said he's going to play. Quinshon Judkins, by all accounts, sounds like he's playing too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there was an update that said day-to-day, and the reason that I put, Sampson ahead is, so if you have Barkley, you might as well grab Bigsby if you can, just in case the practice participation doesn't go quite in line with what Saquon says. But again, maybe I'm wrong with this, but just on the information we have now, Monday at noon Central Time, I gave Sampson a slight bump over Bigsby in terms of likelihood of getting touches and playing, and seeing how that goes. So I put them at I put Sampson at number 4, and then my number 5 pick is actually a receiver.
Well, hold on. I'll reinforce. If you were to say who plays more Week 10, Dylan Sampson or Tank Bigsby, the answer is Dylan Sampson every time. Like Judkins is going to get his 20 touches, whatever it is, but Dylan Sampson has still been a part of the offense. If Barkley is healthy, Tank Bigsby basically is a special teams guy. So I agree with you that Dylan Sampson of the two needs to be rostered, but it shouldn't be under the premise that Judkins is like less likely to play. It sounds like both Barkley and Judkins are trending in that right direction. Again, as we are recording this midday Monday, Gods ask a question saying Jamar Chase is on bye. He has Metcalf and Wan'Dale Robinson. Is there a receiver that we should be targeting? And outside of Christian Watson, I do actually think Parker Washington belongs on this list. Now, no Travis Hunter for the foreseeable future. Godspeed to everyone who fell for that trap. Thankfully, if you're listening to any of us at RotoWire, you should not have had the Travis Hunter on your redraft league bingo card at all. But then you also had Brian Thomas get injured once again. He's been banged up for most of the season. And Parker Washington the past 2 weeks, 19 targets. Nobody wanted to talk about that. They just wanted to talk about Travis Hunter against the Rams getting 50 yards in a blowout loss. I do not understand why Parker Washington wasn't made more conversation if we were all focused on Hunter, but here we go. Now 2 consecutive weeks, Parker Washington, the main guy for Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, exactly. So like you said, Travis Hunter on IR this week, probably not coming back this season. Brian Thomas left the game in the fourth quarter with an ankle injury, so you'll want to watch that. Dynamic Brown is in concussion protocol. Another thing that seems to be getting overlooked. So with all that in mind, Parker Washington led the Jaguars in routes run this week. He had a 27.3% target share, turned that into catching 8 of 9 targets for 90 yards here. It's a real tough upcoming schedule at Houston, who's 5, versus the Chargers, who's 2 against wide receivers, at Arizona, who's 8 against wide receivers. Somehow that doesn't seem to make a ton of sense. But
I'm not worried about the Cardinals.
Yeah,
they're not in that group.
Exactly. So Parker Washington would be the clear. He's the only wide receiver to make my top 5. I've got a lot of news and notes on other wide receivers if maybe you don't want to spend fab on someone like Parker Washington, given the matchup here. But as of Monday, a little afternoon Central Time, Parker Washington seemingly has a clear path to continue this type of volume in the Jacksonville offense.
I'll add one more name to the list, at least of the top 5 for both of us. Again, we try to collectively come up with some names. We talked about Luke Musgrave at the beginning of the show. I really strongly advised going against the idea that he's going to be a fill-in for Tucker Kraft. You have Sam Darnold if you're streaming for quarterbacks, you're looking for replacements for Mahomes of the ilk. We had thought last week Tyrone Tracy was going to be the guy in New York. You have Cam Skadby's unfortunate injury. Here goes Tyrone Tracy, the volume running back last year. No, Jake. Actually, it was Devin Singletary who ends up getting more touches and plays slightly more than Tyrone Tracy in that loss to the 49ers. I made this argument in the article. It makes absolutely zero sense in my mind to have the 7-year, 28-year-old running back play more than the second-year Tyrone Tracy who had promises last year. But maybe that's why the Giants are where they're at right now. One of the dumbest teams in the league and make dumb moves all the time is having Devin Singletary get a bunch of work. So I think we have to respect this result that Tyrone Tracy clearly isn't going to be a volume player like we all assumed he would be. And in fact, it will be a platoon or a split between Singletary and Tyrone Tracy.
Mm-hmm. You're right. It is a bit baffling because Tyrone Tracy played well for the Giants down the stretch last year. Yet Devin Singletary is only 5% rostered in Yahoo leagues. Comes out, he plays 7 more snaps than Tyrone Tracy, carries the ball 8 times for 43 yards. Tracy only carried the ball 5 times for 18 yards. And this game wasn't necessarily a blowout. I mean, the 49ers were in control, but they only win by 10 points. And, they pulled away a little bit towards the end, so it was relatively normal circumstances here for this backfield. Yet Singletary was getting more snaps and more carries. The one noteworthy thing, though, is that Tyrone Tracy ran more routes. I mean, obviously, I would still, if I had rostered both of them, I'd still probably start Tracy due to that, PPR type of upside. But Singletary at least works his way into the conversation because he'll be getting some work here. Now, upcoming, the Giants are at the Bears, who are 24th against opposing running backs in half PPR formats. And then after that, they have 3 top 5 defenses in the Packers, Lions, and Patriots here before a week 14 bye. So maybe a stream this week, but Chicago really, their weakness, I mean, on defense, they're missing a lot of guys in the front 7, but they let Chase Brown catch a ton of passes and he targeted a ton of times. And if we agree based on usage in week 9 that Tracy is the better pass catching running back, I do think Tracy bounces back and has a much better fantasy day than Singletary. We're just kind of putting Singletary as an honorable mention on our top 5 list because, again, a new name, someone that probably wasn't heavily rostered, that gets on the radar now based on just the snap counts alone.
Yeah, given the waiver wire group that we have, a guy under even 10%, I think matters a lot for a lot of different leagues. So just wanted to mention Devin Singletary of that list. Again, for the Week 10 waiver wires, it's a little bit bleak. And even the guys that probably get the elevated fantasy role, Luke Musgrave in particular, I'm not really buying into from a fantasy perspective. We're going to get a word from our sponsors here before we go over to the quarterbacks chalkboard here. Cash in on your NFL picks this season with Chalkboard. Simply pick more or less on your favorite player stats to win up to 5,000 times your money. For a limited time only, new players receive a free pick and 100% deposit match. See why over 1 million fans have already locked in with Chalkboard to turn their sports knowledge into cold, hard cash. Whether you're locking in the perfect slip with alternate lines, using the cash out feature to take your money and run, or hammering the daily promos like I like to do, today's your chance to win up to $40,000 on a single entry. Stop sitting on the sidelines. Get into the game with Chalkboard Fantasy Sports, now available in 30-plus states. Download Chalkboard today and use promo code ROTONFL. That's ROTONFL to claim your free pick and 100% deposit match right now. All right, we have Sam Darnold at the top of our waiver wire list for a reason. I think rest of season we feel much more confident in the Seahawks offense as a whole, but also when you're missing Patrick Mahomes, when you're missing Dak Prescott, possibly even Joe Flacco, looking for a quarterback streamer this week is going to be an important thing. Only issue, not a lot of great options, at least of the retread guys that we've talked about in the past, right? So what's your thoughts on the streaming quarterback situation for week 10?
Yeah, so obviously you have to talk about Marcus Mariota. It's not like he lit the world up here in his showings. He had a pretty good game against Vegas, I guess, in week 3. But Marcus Mariota is only 5% rostered. A lot of people, myself included, dropped him after it was confirmed that Jane Daniels would come back. But then, of course, Jane Daniels in garbage time has a gruesome elbow injury, non-throwing arm, but that'll probably keep him out the rest of the season there. So Jane Daniels is out. It's Marcus Mariota the rest of the way out. Marcus Mariota has pretty good matchups against Detroit, who's 24th against opposing quarterbacks, and at Miami, who's 23rd before a Week 12 bye. Mariota does probably won't have Terry McLaurin until after that bye. At least I wouldn't count on that because he re-injured that quad, I believe, and we don't know the status on that. But Mariota enters the conversation, of course. I put a note on here. Both Kyler Murray and Brock Purdy are 62% rostered. Obviously, Murray's going to sit tonight's game against the Cowboys, and Purdy sat out again this week. Who knows what he'll be with those nagging injuries anyway, but both of those names are people you can look to at quarterback. But then going on the list, it's really rough. Trevor Lawrence, who comes up in this conversation a lot, he's at Houston, who's like the best defense against opposing quarterbacks. Yep. Justin Fields, 45%. He's home, but against the Browns, who have a very good defense. Aaron Rodgers, another streamer that comes up, at the Chargers. Tua versus Buffalo. I mean, and then you got Penix, who's got the Colts in the London game this week. The streamers aren't necessarily there. I did want to highlight J.J. McCarthy because he came out and had a pretty good week against Detroit. But this Baltimore defense, as you noted last week, and stopped me from picking up and playing Tua, thankfully, on Thursday
You're welcome.
This Baltimore defense is getting much better. So despite the season-long stats that you might see that may suggest Baltimore may be a favorable matchup, I'm not sure if McCarthy is a great stream this week. Now, maybe rest of season, there's a couple matchups in here that McCarthy can have some utility. And, of course, because of all that time on the sidelines, he got down to 29% in Yahoo leagues. So, there could be something there. I wouldn't count on a huge game this week, though. But, again, McCarthy has great offensive weapons, and, the possibility to get a touchdown in there because his playmakers are making plays is always existing here. So
under 150 passing yards against the Lions in that win. Like I thought, you're looking at the score, and I was like rage quitting the Packers watching that game. So I'm trying to like scan through other channels and look at my fantasy teams. Like, wow, Vikings beating the Lions. This is kind of crazy. McCarthy must be going, oh no, actually no, he's just not doing. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
and he ends up getting.
He wasn't good. He was 14 for 25.
He ends up getting it from the rushing perspective, which is where McCarthy's value is going to be from a fantasy quarterback. But you were actually the catalyst for changing my tune on Jackson Dart, Jake, because we had talked about when Jackson Dart became the starting quarterback for the Giants a little bit over a month ago, not at this point, that Dart still had fantasy value even in what I thought was going to be a tough stretch because he could run. McCarthy's the same sort of way. I just don't – that's not the way that Kevin O'Connell wants his quarterbacks to play. So I think that we're going to see McCarthy become – I just don't want to rely on here's 10 points on the ground, whereas I think you could get that from Fields. We have that from Jackson Dart, it feels like most weeks too. So I have my reservations even about J.J. McCarthy as a streaming quarterback moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. Again, for me, it's just kind of the weapons and
sure.
and how that plays out. And then, of course, you have your 2 quarterback leagues. Tyler Shuck came out, actually had the same passing line pretty much as McCarthy, 15 for 24, 176 yards a score. Also had an interception. Shuck doesn't really offer you much rushing upside there. You only ran the ball one time for 2 yards in the bad loss to the Rams. Saints offense is hapless. I don't think you can count on Chuck for much of anything. In the same way that CJ Stroud left the game in concussion protocol, Davis Mills is next up for the Texans here. Both those guys are kind of on the same plane for me, as in desperation, super flex 2 quarterback starts. Yeah. That I'm gonna put a bid on Davis Mills and Fishbowl this week because I had lost Burrow, I lost Rattler. I'm gonna see Davis. Dylan Gabriel is my only actually starting quarterback right now in that league. So this seems to happen to me every year in Fishbowl. But yeah, those guys are on the radar, I guess, but definitely not for redraft leagues. Go through all those other names that we had.
I did pick Bryce Young in my article as if like you are in deeper leagues, who's the one quarterback. I don't think the Saints defense is competitive right now. I think they kind of recognize where they're at, and we're seeing them fade a little bit. Now, divisional game's different. Bryce Young is not a good quarterback. I felt so comfortable in that Packers game every time that he dropped back to pass that good things would happen. But against the Saints defense, maybe you can have Bryce Young. And I like enough Tet McMillan, Xavier Legette can be a thing, Jalen Coker a little bit more involved. There's reasons to be optimistic for Bryce Young against the Saints defense. That was my only play.
Yeah, I guess I could see that. It's a one and done matchup. He barely goes ahead of those 2 quarterback guys, but yeah, I'm down for that.
I actually think this is a relevant question, kind of just to put into context how low I think of Davis Mills. Would you rather have Justin Fields against the Ravens or Davis Mills or your Tyler Shucks of the world? Because we're talking about basically it feels like quarterback 28, 29, and 30 in real life. But fantasy-wise, it's a little bit different. Where would you kind of rank
Fields? Actually has the Browns, and I'd rank Fields ahead of Davis Mills this week.
All right. Yeah, I think I would take Fields as well, too. You're right, over the Browns. Man defense, which would shut down anybody, even if Garrett Wilson comes back. However, Fields could theoretically run around in that scenario, and man defense, their backs turned to Fields. It's bleak. It certainly is bleak. But
and Fields has proven somewhat effective to score in garbage time when they're 4 touchdowns down and get soft coverage. So
here, I can guarantee this. I'm not playing Fields in Stake League, and therefore you will have good fantasy days when that happens. It's only when I play Fields in my Stake League team does he end up doing bad. So what I see, what I do, appreciate you commenting on the chat here. That's my recommendation is Fields of that group here. Let's get a word from our sponsors, Draft Battle. Weekly Draft Fantasy Football is here. Welcome to Draft Battle, the only fantasy football platform where the draft is king. What's the best part about playing fantasy football? Well, it has to be the draft, right? So why do we only draft at the beginning of the season? At Draft Battle, you can enter snake draft contest every week, all season long. And the best part, you get $100 bonus cash right now at sign up with promo code ROTOWIRE. You heard that right. $100 bonus cash with promo code RotoWire. Draft Battle contests last 1 week only and have no season-long commitments, no salary caps, better odds, 8 teams per contest, and with a best ball format, it means you have no roster management either, plus super flex scoring and weekly payouts. Injuries derail your season-long league like they have for me? Well, you can stay in the game all season long with Draft Battle, high stakes, weekly draft, fantasy football. Bonus cash is non-withdrawable, must be 18 plus years and older, and present in select states, 19 and plus in Nebraska. Visit draftbattle.com for details. All right, let's go over to the running backs. And again, we had our top 10 list more or less include a lot of retreads from past weeks. We had talked about Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary, Tajay Spears in this mix, Isaiah Davis. As of right now, mid-afternoon Monday, we've not heard any reports of trades for Tony Pollard or Breece Hall. So let's rehash this list again, Jake, and kind of the order of importance from waiver.
Yeah, exactly. I put Tajay Spears up at the top, but he's 45% rostered. Chances are you can't really grab him any longer here. And a lot of that's based on the Pollard trade rumors. You've got Isaiah Davis here too, who might even take a bigger portion of the workload if the RB1 for the Jets, and that is Breece Hall, ends up on the move here during tomorrow's deadline. We also threw Dylan Sampson and Tank Bigsby on our list here. Quashawn Judkins is day-to-day. Doesn't seem that serious. Same thing with Saquon Barkley, but both of those guys are, if you've got Judkins or Barkley, you might as well grab Sampson or Bigsby just to make sure you have a back. So those guys are there. And then we added Devin Singletary, who actually played more snaps than Tyrone Tracy this week. But Tracy ran 4 more routes, and they're playing a Bengals team that gave up a ton of catches to Chase Brown in the second half last week. Some of that was maybe game flow, but I'm still liking, obviously, Tracy to start over Singletary. So none of those are, if anyone's a priority ad, I'd say it's Spears or Davis, just because, you can always cut bait if the trade doesn't happen. But that's what you're looking at for the top running backs this week. There are a handful of quick hitters that maybe we want to discuss, though.
Yeah, and I guess I kind of wanted to tier. We had talked about Kareem Hunt last week, especially with Isaiah Pacheco out. That ended up being pretty good. We mentioned Kyle Monangai in weeks past as sort of this tier. Obviously, with Swift out, Monangai elevates that role. I'll just get people aware that both Blake Corum and Bashal Tutin have been getting a little bit more work. In the way that the Broncos use RJ Harvey, we're getting like a 30% usage of Bashal Tutin as well as a designed pass catcher. He got more of the red zone work in that game against the Raiders than Travis Etienne, which of course hurt my fantasy teams as well too.
I was
Inexplicably
screaming at the TV when they took Etienne out.
I don't understand it, but again, the same conversation with the Giants. Like, if you're going to just do stupid things, we have to sort of reinforce or expect that the team is going to keep doing stupid things. And I actually think the idea of getting Bashal Tutin some touches, I have zero issue with that. Much in the same way Blake Corum getting the work that he has now. That was a byproduct of a game in which the Rams basically won by midway through the first quarter. Like, that was non-competitive from the start, but Blake Corum gets usage in these blowout games, and unlike against the Packers, when to protect the Rams to actually destroy a team for the most part. I like Bashal Tutin and Blake Corum in your 12-team leagues if you have like a running back 5 that you kind of want to cycle through.
Yeah, absolutely. If you have a second defense or kicker to cut this week, always make your roster as good as it can be here. And obviously, you're right. We got the DeAndre Swift news well after the show last week. That was a bit of a surprise. Monangai steps in, has an outstanding game and an excellent matchup here. We'll see how long that lasts. Obviously, he shot from someone we had talked about in the same context as Tutin and Corum many times over the years. So you just keep that in mind. All of a sudden, you have him, and he's a must start. I was able to start Monangai over Tyrone Tracy, even in a league where I just spent $63 fab dollars on Tracy. Monangai was the play based on the matchup there. So that works here. We have those guys. There are a couple of new names this week here. Terrell Jennings for the Patriots carried the ball 11 times for 35 yards and a score. Ramondre Stevenson was out. Travion Henderson got a bunch of work. Got his most touches all season, but they're really not ready to hand the reins over to Travion Henderson, it seems. This year's preseason darling. So Terrell Jennings gets in the conversation there. And again, I mentioned DeAndre Swift being out. We'll see how long that that absence is, because he had been managing this groin injury all season and missing practice time considerably. This was the first week where they decided, okay, we're going to hold him out entirely. But Britton Brown had a touchdown on the ground, seemed to take away a Monangai red zone rush. So that's a bit of a desperation play if you need to.
No Roshan Johnson for that game too. Swift and Johnson were both out.
Yeah, okay, yeah, fair enough. And then I guess I wanted to mention Jaret Patterson is the new temporary RB2 for the Chargers with Hassan Haskins on IR with a hamstring injury. Jaret Patterson actually outperformed Kamani Vidal in the win over Tennessee, even though it was a smash matchup for Vidal. Patterson carried the ball 9 times for 44 yards. Vidal had 12 for 30. Again, it's a desperation play for deeper leagues. And last but not least, I wanted to throw Emmanuel Wilson up there in the handcuff rankings. Josh Jacobs just looks banged up for the Packers here. And, we'll see if that hits a tipping point eventually. But he's getting spelled more and more by Wilson because he doesn't seem fully healthy to me. And Jacobs is by far the more effective option, going to continue to be a fantasy asset, but maybe a slight tier below your Corums and Tutins of the world.
I would agree.
Emmanuel Wilson falls in there, and again, if you have the roster space and you're been relying on Jacobs, who's been excellent in fantasy this week, it cannot hurt to go ahead and have Emmanuel Wilson. And in the event Jacobs were to miss time, it'll be a split between Wilson and
that's
Brooks.
Chris Brooks. Yeah.
Yes, Chris Brooks, but I still think Wilson gets the 60-40, 65-35 type split of that workload. So just throwing some names up here. Are you ready to pull the plug on Brashard Smith, Joe?
Yeah. There's been a lot of smoke regarding the Chiefs trading for running back. We heard about you mentioned Hassan Haskins for the Chargers on injured reserve. I think the Chargers now are back right in the realm of trading for running back too, as well. One of these AFC West teams is going to acquire a running back, and I think in the instance the Chiefs acquire somebody, I liked Brashard Smith. We talked about him in past podcasts as sort of the Jerick McKinnon from a couple of years ago where he won people fantasy leagues. It might be possible that the acquisition running back becomes that sort of role. I really believe that still has to be a function in Kansas City, and they want it to be. But Brashard Smith has not been getting the workload. He's actually decreased the past couple of weeks, and that was even with Isaiah Pacheco out. So, yes, I'm comfortable dropping Brashard Smith at this point.
Yeah, what about Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt? Everyone's favorite Bill. 5 or less points in 3 straight weeks. He's been in double-digit fantasy points twice this year. The offense gets a downgrade with Mariota. I mean, I might be dropping Krosky Merritt for Isaiah Davis or Tajay Spears. What do you think about that?
There was a point in mid-August where the worst fantasy analyst was telling you to draft Travion Henderson in the 3rd round, Travis Hunter in the 4th round, and Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt in the 7th round. It was not me, because I was pushing back on every single one of those. So am I going to victory lap this a little bit, Jake? Absolutely I am. Absolutely. Now, my bigger reservation with the Commanders' offense is that with no Jaden Daniels out for the foreseeable future, you keep saying done for the season. After watching what happened Sunday night, I would think so too. That has not been the report, though. It sounds like theoretically Jaden Daniels could come back. That seems the dumbest thing in my mind, but I'm not going to completely rule out because the Commanders haven't yet. If Jaden Daniels misses most of the season, and I think we could comfortably say that, then you're talking about Marcus Mariota probably using, I think, Jeremy McNichols most out of any of these running backs. Now, Chris Rodriguez did get some work towards the end of that game. He did score a touchdown. I think McNichols is the one that I would rather have, and I actually do think there was a league where I had to start Samaje Perine. That was the Scott Fishbowl. But there are deep leagues where if you can get a guaranteed 7 points in full-point PPR leagues, that's valuable. And Jeremy McNichols, I think, provides that rest of season for the Commanders.
Yeah, it's certainly possible, except I didn't really like the workload on Sunday night. He didn't get a single target and only carried the ball one time. So I put Chris Rodriguez ahead of McNichols for the time being. And Chris Rodriguez, Krosky Merritt are kind of 1A, 1B right now. And also, you'd think you'd give Deebo Samuel some carries in there. Maybe he's not as healthy as
I think it's because he's banged up too. Yeah,
that's certainly part of it there. So, not a lot to like about this Commanders offense here. Krosky Merritt on the chopping block. If you're in your 8 and 10 team leagues, you may have already cut someone like Bill.
Yeah, I think that's certainly possible. We're going to get to the receivers and kind of cycle back to a few of them we mentioned here momentarily. Let's get to our for sponsors. Dabble. Dabble isn't just another DFS app. It's the ultimate social platform where you can connect with other fantasy football lovers. Dabble lets you win big and up to 5,000 times your money this football season. Starting with Dabble is easy. New users get $25 free when signing up. No deposit necessary. Check out the link in the episode description right down below or on the YouTube video here linked to download Dabble right now. And also, let's get a word from our sponsors, Blue Wire. Okay, we're back. And on my top 5 waiver wire list was Jacksonville receiver Parker Washington again. Travis Hunter out for the foreseeable future. You've also said Travis Hunter probably not coming back the rest of the year. That hasn't been ruled out, or that has not been announced officially. It does sound like Hunter misses at least 4 weeks. There was a knee injury. It was a non-contact knee injury, and that's all the information we know. I would assume off all that, Jake, that Travis Hunter does not play the rest of the year, but that has not been confirmed by Jacksonville.
That's where I'm putting my chips, just like with Daniels.
Totally fine with that.
My chips that it's done. I'm going to
totally fine with that.
That's the case, even though I guess it's good to have the disclaimer that that's not official. I mean, technically, Mike Evans isn't out for the season. He could come back in the fantasy playoffs.
I think Mike Evans comes back before any of these guys.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think so too. Technically, Joe Burrow could come back at the end of the season.
Yes.
Right? Like,
so perfect example. Yes.
You know, I haven't fully committed to dropping those guys, but I guess that's what we're looking at. But we do have some interesting wide receiver names this week.
Yeah, well, and I was going to say
Parker Washington that made the top 5.
Yeah, Washington, 19 targets over the past 2 weeks. I had missed the Diami Brown and concussion protocol. Brian Thomas Jr. has been battling various injuries as well. And Jacksonville has a tougher matchup this week, but you look at the rest of season, or at least over the next month, right? Basically, fantasy playoffs start week 14. We care about the next 4 weeks. Parker Washington in a pretty good spot. And if he is Trevor Lawrence's guy, whether he should be or shouldn't be is not the conversation. If he is Trevor Lawrence's guy, which it certainly seems like he is, that has fantasy utility in Liam Cohen's offense. So I think Parker Washington, if he is not my top waiver wire pickup this week, is right up there if you need a receiver.
Yeah, I could throw that. I mean, among all the receivers we're going to talk about, I think he's number 1. But there are a lot of 1B receivers that kind of throw their names into the hat here. And one of them that I want to say is Alec Pierce of the Colts. He was very interesting here. I saw this was from the Zachariason thread this morning. But Alec Pierce has 28 targets in the last 3 games, and Pittman has 30. So he's right up there. The Colts finally played a game from behind this week. And Alec Pierce had 13 freaking targets. I mean, that's a significant amount. Only caught 6 of them for 115 yards, but he's very interesting. He's got the Falcons this week before a bye, then Kansas City and Houston. So tough upcoming schedule. But Alec Pierce is a name we haven't talked about much for the Colts, and I think he gets into this conversation. He was one that at least elevated a little bit above some of the quick hit news and notes I had for you in wide receivers.
Yeah, I think he becomes a bigger deal. I wonder if that's the Steelers' secondary just in particular being bad. And we watched that a week ago Sunday night against the Steelers and Packers game. I'm surprised if Pierce gets that volume rest of season. I know Pittman getting a few more of those downs, but it was just a good game script for the passing game of the Colts. But I go back to Christian Watson if we're adding names to that list. Like, I think Parker Washington's in that group. I like Alec Pierce in that same way. Matthew Golden left the game in the third quarter. Of course, Tucker Kraft and his serious injury done for the year. It's not a necessity now at this point. Christian Watson might just see enough volume where he becomes interesting play territory, where I was saying more speculative even last week already.
Yeah, Romeo Doubs, of course, is the wide receiver one still, as we've been saying since week 2. He had 58 snaps. Christian Watson was second among wide receivers with 41 snaps. Matthew Golden left that game with the shoulder injury. We'll see what LaFleur does with this offense, but you think we're going to go back to Christian Watson end arounds at some point? I know that's in the playbook somewhere still.
I think Savion Williams probably does that, but still, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right. Maybe Savion Williams this year, but I don't know. He had a fumble, and then he had a earful from LaFleur on that drive.
Yep.
We can talk about that at length. But Christian Watson's one of the the announcers were funny calling him one of the best big play guys in the league, and he's shown the ability to go up and get passes. And before Love has, if you take back a couple stages in Love's development, his go-to is chuck the ball up to Watson and hope for the best. So he might have some of that. I don't think he has the same red zone value as someone like Dobbs, who sneaks open in a lot of those slants and option routes. But Christian Watson, absolutely. He's only 28% rostered, and like we've been saying, we're not super high on Musgrave, but with Kraft out, with Golden possibly out, there are more targets for Watson to the point where I think he can be seen 8 to 10 a game for the foreseeable future. Of course, we got Jaden Reed possibly coming back eventually, but Watson
still at least a month away for Jaden Reed too, and Dontavian Wicks didn't play the past couple weeks as well. So I'll add one more to the list as Rashad Bateman scores that touchdown in that massive win over the Dolphins. This has been something that Jim Coventry has talked about on the weekly ranking show here on this channel every Wednesday, that now with Patrick Ricard, the fullback, back for the Ravens, that allows even better blocking. It's why Mark Andrews has more time to be more explosive down the field, as they likely got more opportunities. And that also allows Rashad Bateman, who had 9 touchdowns last year, I think 7 over the final couple of weeks of the season too, or was in that fringe wide receiver 3 flex range. Sure. I think Rashad Bateman actually is in that category too, and I think there's going to be more volume going his way when the Ravens are playing more competitive games.
Yeah, and we like him in the red zone too, of course. I want to throw in Chimere Dike again. I know we talked about him last week. And he only caught 2 passes this week, but he did run the most routes for Tennessee and played more snaps than any Tennessee wide receiver. The thing is most of his value, which is, we don't talk about this much, is return yardage leagues.
Yep.
If you're in a return yard league, DK is a must start, essentially. And of course, he saved people. I had to start him in a few places this week. He saved people with a return touchdown this week. So, good things happen with the ball in his hands, and you might as well consider that as well. The other name I had on my list is Tez Johnson of the Bucks. He was rostered in a lot of leagues and was playing well, but ended up having to get cut after the bye. Obviously, Mike Evans is going to be out till later in the season here. This Chris Godwin situation in Tampa Bay, we don't know. Apparently, his lower leg isn't a re-injury, but I don't think they're going to rush him back suddenly.
Right. And
that means that after Ibuka, Tez Johnson is wide receiver 2. He's got the Patriots in week 10, who are 16, followed by Buffalo and the Rams, who are 12 and 19 against opposing receivers in half PPR formats, respectively. Somebody cut Tez Johnson, but he should be rostered this week. The other one you mentioned, Tony Horton, a little bit.
Torrey Horton, yeah.
Wanted that a ton, but without Cooper Kupp up there, Torrey Horton is another maybe return yardage guy. I think he gets some returns there.
He does. Well, he's also just been a big play specialist too for the Seahawks. He's gotten a couple touchdowns that way as well.
Yeah, you can expect boom or bust. There might be a 2 catch for 6 yard week in there, but you could also have a 2 touchdown week like he did this week. What else did I have here? Update on the Troy Franklin line. The replacement level 12-team redraft wide receiver who's 48% rostered. He had 10 targets this week, but he only caught 4 for 27 yards. So that's far from the multi-touchdown game the week before. And then a quick hit on the Patriots wide receivers. This is kind of a false flag here. Demario Pop Douglas with Keyshawn Boutte going out early. He was our guy last week, of course. Injury wrecked that. Pop Douglas has caught 4 of his 6 targets for 100 yards and 2 scores. But just a warning, that was on 16 snaps compared to 43 snaps for Matt Collins, 41 for Stephon Diggs, and 31 for Kyle Williams, who ran more routes in this game than he did all season long. I'm not buying the sudden emergence of Pop Douglas in this Patriots offense this year. And who knows? there could be a candidate to maybe bring a guy like Chris Olave in. Could be a candidate to bring a guy like Calvin Ridley in, who I thought, based on Ridley's contract, and I guess this goes back to the DK conversation too. I thought based on Ridley's contract, he was going to be very, very tough to move. But I was watching the Fox pregame show, and Jay Glazer comes in with a lot of his little insider names for the show, and he mentioned Ridley as a name that could get moved. And a lot of these insiders, we'll throw names out there just to throw a bunch of darts, and when one gets traded, they can say they called it. I think Jay Glazer's a little more professional.
I think he's elevated above that line. Yes.
Yeah, so I'll weight that opinion a little bit too. And that's another bump I forgot to mention. In the DK status there, but
that's okay. I have covered that now for 3 weeks in the show. I have talked about how I think Calvin Ridley is certainly tradable, and going back to how stupid the Giants are for playing Singletary over Tracy. I just have to think that if you're the Titans, and we saw it last week when Ridley was practicing but ends up being ruled out, the Titans 1-7 right now, absolutely nothing to look forward to. Maybe their 4th-round pick emerging as a guy that matters is one of the lone bright spots you can focus on, and I think that's what the Titans should be doing. So I would be a little surprised if Ridley is still on the roster by Wednesday afternoon, with the trade deadline coming up here.
Yep, and you hear some rumblings that maybe he's not as injured as they're leading to believe. So we'll see how that goes. But outside of a quick note to cut Jacoby Myers, who's another.
Speaking of a guy that might not be as injured as well, too, right?
Yeah, exactly. We kind of caught these rumblings before the season. Pretty inconsequential in his return that can be cut wherever he goes. I don't think he's going to make that big of a difference here. No. It'll kind of be like the Amari Cooper trade to Buffalo, who didn't do anything after that happened. So yeah, Jacoby Myers is a cut. I think we can move on to tight ends.
Yeah, unfortunately, if I'm going to victory lap on calling Travis Hunter and JCM, we can also chastise me for saying go ahead and draft Jacoby Myers. That came on a little bit later in draft season. I went to be convinced by our guy Nick Whalen, who loved Jacoby Myers entering the year, but couldn't have been more wrong about that. I traded for him in 2 leagues. I dropped him in the stake league. I could not. I had to roster him or Mac Jones with Brock Purdy again out for another week. I feel fine.
I started Trey Tucker in stake league last week. So.
Yeah. All right, let's move over to Titans again, tight ends. And again, we have had this Luke Musgrave conversation to begin the show. You can go back and rewind that if you want as well. Somebody in the chat was asking, how would you go ahead and rank the guys that are available? So I'll read the names off to you, and I think let's almost fold this in as a quick hitter part of things since we've had so many conversations.
Sure, a lot of these Musgrave. Are rehashes.
All right, so the question asks here, we need to buy this week at tight end or a bye week fill-in. Would you have Luke Musgrave? Would you have Colston Loveland, Isaiah Likely, or Cade Otton? Again, with Ferguson on bye. And I think, to me, there's one obvious answer of this group, but I'm curious if you feel a bit differently.
Well, the circumstances could change here if David Njoku gets traded. He's another guy that's been subject to trade rumors. And Harold Fannin, I put on my list again. I feel like we've talked about him like 6 of 8 weeks. He's 42% rostered, fell below our threshold with the Browns on bye. He seems to be the only pass catcher in Cleveland that Dylan Gabriel is comfortable throwing to. Mm-hmm. So I think Fannin could very well top that list. For what it's worth, we've had David Njoku miss time already earlier, and Harold Fannin's playing time didn't bump up.
So, Fannin's fine. I actually think Fannin could pick up right now anyway. He should be just a mention as is. But sure. I don't think it's necessitated on David Njoku being traded. Like, Fannin is just going to be – because Dylan Gabriel can only throw 5 yards in the middle of the field. That's where Harold Fannin can thrive. So, yep. I like him as a pickup overall, but I don't think it's necessitated by David Njoku being traded.
Yeah, so then if you look at this list that I have here, for me, I guess it's between Loveland and Musgrave, I think, to me. And I know – Musgrave, I think, is going to get your safe 3 catches for 50 yards. Colston Loveland's interesting. I'll take the L on him, thinking that maybe he was a drop candidate when he hardly got used after Cole Kmet came back. And then, of course, Colton Loveland comes out and has that huge game, career breakout game against the Bengals, who are atrocious against tight ends. I think
horrible.
The Zachariason thread this morning, I always bring that up. I love that. Shout out to him. Bengals have allowed 12 tight end touchdowns this year, and the next closest is 6. So Loveland's not going to get this kind of juicy matchup
crazy.
Here. Or is he? Loveland has the Giants, who are 13. They're above average. Then he's got the Vikings, who are 23.
I just say, just stop there. All that matters to me is Loveland did what he was supposed to do against a very bad defense. Now, again, 60 yards, came on atrocious tackling and inexplicably wide open, but he did what he was supposed to do, and Cole Kmet left that game with a concussion. He's been banged up earlier. So if Cole Kmet's not playing and it's a 1 week thing, Colston Loveland should probably be in our top 5 waiver wire list. I have way more confidence in him on a 1 week basis than I do basically most of these running backs we talk about, these receivers as well. Like Loveland, I believe in this match against the Giants this week has to be among that group of people that you're playing and probably starting.
Maybe I'm forcing a brink pump too much because, listen, in 6 games that Loveland played before this, his best game was 3 catches for 38 yards. You know, he could turn back into a pumpkin, and I just don't want to overrate the matchup against the atrocious Bengals.
Right, fair.
In a game that was, 48-47? Come on.
Yeah, so, right.
So I don't want to overrate that too much here. And try to be, looking ahead. And so it's closer than you think. But I guess, yes, now that we've seen a flash of what Loveland can do, Musgrave won't do that. We know that.
Correct. Right.
So Loveland would be the matchup in this. Higbee's also a close third in this place. I don't trust the Ravens tight ends here. You get Andrews 2 touchdowns, but he ran less routes than all the tight ends, and it's just a mess. You can't accurately predict Ravens tight end usage in any way from week to week. So,
and then last one, it feels like a weekly thing for me. Mason Taylor was on bye with the Jets. Now he's back again. We think Garrett Wilson's gonna be playing now. I missed the past couple weeks due to that knee injury. Sure. I like Mason Taylor. Mason Taylor is below Harold Fannin. Mason Taylor is below Colston Loveland this week. I would have Mason Taylor over Juwan Johnson or in that mix, and I definitely have Mason Taylor over Luke Musgrave. We've been talking about Mason Taylor a lot. Exactly. I've been wrong about that for the most part, but I would rather have Mason Taylor than Musgrave.
Yeah, exactly. So he catches the game-winning touchdown against, you guessed it, the Bengals. Then of course has the bye, so his ownership is down to 20%. I have him rostered in a couple of 12-team leagues still, but he might still be one of my first cuts to try to grab one of these good guys on waivers. So he's in the mix here. Do we got a quick minute for defenses?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? I had a kicker note in here today. Chase McLaughlin got down to 53% rostered.
Okay.
Tampa Bay's bye. He's a possible rest of the season kicker if he was dropped. Don't worry about streaming that. He has 4 double-digit fantasy games this year, can kick some bombs. Tampa Bay offense is good. Anywho, defenses here. The Ravens, if you buy their resurgence, are in play. They're 46% rostered on the road this week. But 2 defenses I like a little bit better are the Bills, 43%. They're at Miami, also on the road.
Definitely.
And the Browns, 31%. They're at the Jets here.
Yeah.
The Browns I probably like a little more. Now, will the Browns win that game? Maybe not. Probably. I think they'll be underdogs in that game, but you still have Myles Garrett and his sack potential, and you still have Justin Fields and his potential to turn the ball over here and get them in a hole to the point where the pass rush could activate here. So I'm looking at the Browns or the Bills as week 10 streamers on defense.
Yeah, I think people might say, well, we'll play the Jets defense against the Browns. That is a stoppable object meets movable force. Because the Jets defense has been atrociously bad, but the Browns offense is incapable of doing anything of consequence. I would not want to play the Jets defense, even though I think Dylan Gabriel is.
And the Jets, it wouldn't shock me if the Jets, I guess the Browns fit into this too, but it wouldn't shock me if the Jets moved more pieces before the deadline here to make the defense even worse.
Yeah.
But it seems like Myles Garrett's sticking around in Cleveland. That's going to be, maybe it's not a tough contract to move for a player of his caliber, but the Myles Garrett factor alone makes Cleveland playable in turnover-prone thing against the Jets here. So, yeah, that's what I got for streamers here.
All right. Well, I think that does it for us on the Week 10 edition of the Waiver podcast here on RotoWire Fantasy Football Network. We have, of course,
plug-in?
Well, yes, absolutely. Go for it.
Yeah. All right. So, hey, tonight's opening night of college basketball season.
Let's go.
Believe it or not, if you've been paying attention on the wire today, Adrian Woj, the Woj bomb fame, got tossed from the St. Bonaventure game and forcibly removed by security for jawing at the refs. So, yes, college basketball season is back in full swing. We got your full array of DFS tools and projections on the site. We've got DFS pick'em and betting previews for tonight. We'll do betting previews every single day, and the rest on select slates. But yeah, we're back in full swing for college basketball. Best injury source out there. Nobody aggregates that data in an easy to find manner like our team here does. So yeah, give us a shout out here. You can see that YouTube 15. 15% off any sub. Our subscriptions are all in one these days. So if you're listening want to check up on your fantasy team, want to use the new Who Should I
Yep.
Start tool, that's fantastic. You'll get that, plus all your college basketball needs there. So go ahead and give us a look. I'm ready for that season to start too.
Yeah, it's all wrapped into one, the NBA stuff as well. I know that season's popping along right now. Like, there's a lot of different ways to use the RotoWire content, not just, of course, listening to us and following our advice, but I'll have the Waiver Wire article up here later today as well, too. We'll have the video overlaid in that, so if you're participating in the comment section, you can also wave hi to the article as well, too, so lots of other ways to reach out to us. Again, any questions after the trade deadline, JB Fantasy Sports on Twitter, at RotoJake. Otherwise, back in next week, recapping everything that happened in Week 10. Hopefully, not any critical injuries to the Packers or dumb losses, but we'll have to see. It seems it's a weekly thing with Matt LaFleur and company. Appreciate everyone listening, and we're back in next week.